Good morning, everyone. I'm Clifford Daniel R. Rivera. I'm about to discuss the Republic Act number 9514, or also known as the Fire Code of the Philippines of 2008. First and foremost, RA number 9514 is an act establishing a comprehensive fire code of the Philippines, repealing the Presidential Decree number 1185. So, the Presidential Decree number 1185, i- in simpler terms, is like a rule book for keeping safe fires from the Philippines. It tells people how to prevent fires in buildings and what to do if a fire happens. It says what equipment buildings should have, like fire extinguishers and emergency exits. It also says how firefighters should be trained and what happens if someone breaks the fire safety rules. So the PD number 1185 was amended into RA 9514, and it was signed into law by President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo in December 19, 2008. Section 1. Let me first wait a minute. Section 1. In the Section 1, this act shall be known as the Fire Code of the Philippines of 2008. This act is known as the Fire Code of the Philippines of 2008. Section 2. It states that it is the policy of the state to ensure public safety, promote economic development through the prevention and suppression of all kinds of destructive fires, and promote the professionalization of the fire service as a profession. Towards this end, the state shall enforce all laws, rules, and regulations to ensure adherence to standard fire prevention and safety measures, and promote accountability in the fire protection and prevention service. To give you a brief summary of this particular law, it's more of like, in this law, it states of what a certain building should require, and that the BFP has the authority of major ranges, such as permitting buildings if they if their if their equipments or infrastructure is permitted in case of an incident. In this Fire Code of the Philippines, it also states that BFP or practitioners should undergo trainings to be able to suppress a certain incident. Next. Definition of terms, Section 3. Abatement. It means any act that would remove or neutralize a fire hazard. Next, administrator. Take note, any person who acts as an agent of the owner and manages the use of a building for him. So, ang kaibahan ng owner tsaka administrator ay, ang owner yung mismong nagmamayari ng isang building. Ang administrator is, they are the ones who acts as an agent. Sila ang parang, sila ang naga-manage sa isa ka building. Ang owner, sila mismo ang naga-own. Tapos next, blasting agent. Any material or mixture consisting of a fuel and oxidizer used to set off explosives. Next. Cellulose nitrate or nitrocellulose, a highly combustible and explosive compound produced by the reaction of nitric acid with a cellulose material. Next, cellulose nitrate plastic, any plastic substance, materials, or compound having cellulose nitrate, nitrocellulose as base. Any plastic has this certain substance. Combustible, flammable, or inflammable, descriptive of materials that are easily set on fire. These are certain materials that can be or highly flammable or or not flammable. Next, so how about combustible fiber? Combustible fiber, any readily ignitable and free burning fiber such as cotton, oakum, rugs, waistcloth, waste paper, kapok, hay, straw, Spanish moss, excelsior, and other similar materials commonly used in comments. So next, combustible liquid. Any liquid having a flash point or above 37.8 Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So when we say combustible, it ignites certain vapors that can be ignited when it reaches a certain ignition point or fire point. So corrosive liquid, any liquid which causes fire, any take note, any liquid which causes fire when in contact with organic matter or with certain materials. So next, definition of terms, section 3 again. Ember. So ember, a hot piece or lump that remains after a materials has partially burned and is still oxidizing without the manifestation of flames. So, nakikita nyo ba yung, for example, kapag nagluluto tayo ng ano, ng, pag nag-grill tayo, di ba ginagamit natin ay yung coal. Ang example lang ember is yung nag-glow. From the word itself, ember, it glows. So, when an incident of fire, usually this can be found in the scene, embers. So next, fire alarm. Any visual or audible signal produced by a device or system to warn the occupants of the building or firefighting elements of the presence or danger of fire. So as the word itself, fire alarm, these are systems that are put into a building that will be first set off to warn that a partially fire has started. So next, fire trap. So what is fire trap? So a fire trap is a building unsafe in case of fire because it will burn easily or because it lacks adequate exits or fire escapes. So I think the examples of fire exits are establishments which can be easily be burnt, like wood, or buildings that lacks on fire exits. So next, public assembly building. From the word itself, these are buildings which many people gathers for, I think, recreation, for work, office, or even for educational purposes. So as you can see, any building or construction where 50 people or more congregate, gather, or assemble for any other purposes. So sprinkler system. So under ni siya sa fire alarm system. Sprinkler system automatically discharges water when activated by heat or combustion produced from fire. So this sprinkler system can, in this certain period, if you have been in the mall, you can easily spot a sprinkler system, or even in 7-Eleven stores, you can easily spot sprinkler systems. So next, owner. The owner is the person who holds the legal right of possession or title to a building or real property. So understandable naman, no? So next, so let's go to section 4. So the applicability of the code. So in this RA 9514, who are covered by their provisions. So the provisions of the fire code shall apply to all, remember, to all persons and all private and public buildings, facilities, or structures erected or constructed before and after its effectivity. So this particular RA 9514 can be called a retroactive law. So because, as what you can see, it includes structured before and after its effectivity. So, for example, if way back in 2000s, buildings that erected or constructed before the applicability of this particular RA 9514 are all affected and or included. So next. So how about the responsibility for the enforcement of this code? So under in section 5 it says this code shall be administered and enforced by the Bureau of Fire Protection. So take note, this particular code is administered and enforced by the Bureau of Fire Protection. So under the direct supervision and control of the Chief of Bureau of Fire Protection through the hierarchy of organization as provided by the Chapter 6 of Republic Act number 6975 with the approval of the Secretary of Department of the Interior and Local Government. So, next, the Chief of BFP is hereby authorized to. So, in this section, it says that the BFP is the one who administers and enforces the certain law. So, the Chief or BFP is hereby authorized to do what? So, they are authorized to do first, issue implementing rules and regulations, prescribe standards, schedules of fees, fire service charges, and administrative penalties, therefore, as provided in the pertinent provisions of this code. Second, reorganize the BFP as may be necessary and appropriate so they can be able to reorganize if necessary, if they want to. Next, support and assist fire volunteers, practitioners, and fire volunteer organizations. So the BFP is and can support financially fire volunteers and practitioners and fire volunteer organizations in the country who shall undergo mandatory fire suppression inspection, rescue, emergency, medical services, and related emergency response trainings. So, a practitioner should also always, or a volunteer should always undergo mandatory fire trainings, to be in short. Because if you can't, but because if you won't undergo certain training, you might be shocked. You might be shocked or even be in fear without proper training, so you can be disciplined and know how to handle certain situations including fire incidents and rescue operations. So next, enter into long-term agreement either through public biddings or negotiations in accordance with the provisions of RA 9184, otherwise known as the Government Procurement Reform Act of 2003. So what is the Republic Act 9814? So the Republic Act RA 9184 is an act providing for the modernization, standardization, and regulation of the procurement activities of the government and for other purposes. So next, enter into memoranda of agreement with other departments, bureaus. So when we say bureaus, it refers to the Tri-Bureau, the Philippine National Police, jail management, the Bureau of Fire Protection, and so on. Agencies, offices, and corporations of the government as well as private institutions in order to define areas of cooperation and coordination and delineate responsibility on fire prevention education, fire safety, fire prevention, fire suppression, and other matters of common concern. Organize the BFP as may be necessary and appropriate. So in this particular work of BFP, they want to spread fire education. So in the way of of collaboration of certain departments, bureaus, agencies, or even private institutions. So they seek to spread fire education and fire safety and how to suppress or extinguish a certain fire in case of an incident. Next, call on the police, other law enforcement agencies, and local government assistance to render necessary assistance in the enforcement of this code. So by this, the Bureau of Fire Protection can collaborate with the police in conducting seminars, especially just like for example in this month, the Fire Prevention Month, which is the March. So it is not just handled by the BFP but also supported by the Tri-Bureau. Next, designate a fire safety inspector through his/her duly authorized representative who shall conduct an inspection of every building or construction within his area of responsibility. So in this particular, the BFP will authorize a certain individual who will inspect almost every building which is under his area of responsibility. So that is why, for example, in UM, uh, in the day after, we can see that there are fire officers who are inspecting our classrooms. So this falls under this criteria. Next, inspect at reasonable time any building, structure, installation, or premises for dangerous or hazardous conditions or materials as set forth in this code, provided that in case of single family dwelling, an inspection must be upon the consent of the occupant or upon lawful order from the proper court. So in this certain area, it highlights that you cannot easily inspect a certain building without the consent of the occupant or upon lawful order of the proper court. So, next, where conditions exist and are deemed hazardous to life and property, to order the owner occupant of any building or structure to summarily abate such hazardous conditions. So, when you say abate, to lessen or to eradicate. So next, require the building owner occupant to submit plans and specifications and other pertinent documents of said building to ensure compliance with applicable codes and standards. So lastly, the Chief BFP is hereby authorized to issue a written notice to the owner or contractor to stop work on portion of any work due to absence or in violation of approved plans and specifications, permit, and or clearance or certifications approved by the chief, BFP, or his or her duly authorized representative. So if a certain building violated, for example, if a certain building is declared a fire hazard building, the contractor owner should immediately stop any portion of any work due to absence or violation of approved plans and specifications. So, Section 6, Technical Staff. The Chief BFP shall constitute a technical staff of highly qualified persons. So, when we say highly qualified persons, they already had undergo trainings under specific specialization, especially in fire prevention and rescue, who are knowledgeable on fire prevention, fire safety, and fire suppression. They may be drawn not only from the organic members of the BFP and other government offices and agencies, but also from other sources. In the latter case, they will either be appointed into the service or hired as consultants in accordance with the law. So, Section 7. So, in Section 7, it includes inspections, safety measures, fire safety, constructions, and protective or warning systems. As may be defined and provided in the rules and regulations, owners, administrators, or occupants of buildings should mandatory follow these certain premises or rules. So, responsible persons shall be required to comply with the following. A. Inspection requirement. A fire safety inspection shall be conducted by the Chief BFP or duly authorized representative as prerequisite to the grants of permits or licenses by local government and other government agencies concerned for the blank. First, use or occupancy of buildings, structures, facilities, or other premises. And next, storage, handling, or use of explosives. So in this particular responsibility, the BFP is responsible for the inspection requirement. So they will inspect what a certain building is used for and what is stored in that certain building. There may be combustible, flammable, toxics, and other hazardous materials. They want to sure if these certain materials are handled correctly and and maybe has corrective actions if they are mishandled incorrectly. So next. So this is a little bit long. So please bear with me. So B, safety measures for hazardous materials. So next in this particular responsibility, they put certain safety measures, especially on handling hazardous materials, which can be corrosive liquids, highly flammable materials in solid, gaseous, and liquid forms. So fire safety measures shall be required for the manufacture, storage, handling, or use of hazardous material involving cellulose, nitrate, plastic of any kind, combustible fibers, cellular materials such as foam, rubber, sponge rubber, and plastic foam, flammable and combustible liquids or gases of any classification, number 5, flammable paints, varnishes, stains, and organic coatings, 6, highly piled or widely spread combustible stock, 7, metallic magnesium in any form, 8, corrosive liquids, oxidizing materials, organic peroxide, nitromethane, ammonium nitrate, and so on, blasting agents, explosives, and special industrial explosive materials. So 10, fireworks, materials or any kind of form, matches in commercial quantities, hot ashes, live coals and embers, mineral, vegetable, or animal oils, combustible waste, materials for recycling or resale, explosive dust and vapors, agriculture, forest, marine, or mineral products which may undergo spontaneous combustion. So, as what can you see, all of these certain products are can be the agent to set off a fire. Under all of these products can produce a fire in case of ignition. So that is why they put safety measures for this particular list of hazardous materials. Next. So C, safety measures for hazardous operation and processes. Fire safety measures shall be required for the following hazardous operation processes. So in this particular part, these are safety measures on certain operations. In the latter part, it says materials, but in this part, it says operations. So in this part, these are acts, but the latter part is certain individual materials. So let's continue. So first process or operation that should be included that has to be include as safety measures is first welding or soldering. Second, industrial baking and drying. 3, waste disposal. 4, pressurized forced draft burning equipment. Smelting and forging. Motion picture projection using electrical or arc lamps. Refining, distillation, and solvent extraction. And 8, such other operations or processes as may hereafter be prescribed in the rules and regulations. So D, provisions on fire safety construction, protective and warning systems. So owners, occupants, or administrators or buildings, structures, and other in their premises or facilities, except such other buildings or structures as may be exempted in the rules and regulations to be promulgated under Section 5, herefore shall incorporate and provide therein safety construction, protective warning system, and shall develop and implement fire safety programs to it. So in this particular responsibility, so owners and occupants should have a fire safety construction, or especially fire warning systems. So the certain building should be the least material that can be easily set on fire and should has a fire warning system. So first, fire protection features such as sprinkler systems. First, sprinkler systems, hose boxes, hose reels or standpipe systems, and other firefighting equipment. So in this particular provision, it states that all of these equipments should be available in a certain building to be able to pass the fire safety precautions of a certain building. So I repeat, a particular building should at least has all of this to be able to call it a fire safety construction, or a protective or a protective building which is far from fire danger. So next. So section 8, prohibited acts. The following are declared as prohibited acts and omission. So A, these lists are the certain acts that should be avoided or can cause certain penalties that will be later discussed by me. So first, obstructing or blocking the exit ways or across the buildings clearly marked for fire safety purposes. So fire exits should not be blocked. Uh, so in this particular sentence, words, I have a particular experience with that. So way back in 2020, we and our family go into a certain hotel in Davao, which is I think very old. But I immediately s- I immediately by I immediately saw that their fire exit was blocked. They put like barricade, and I think but in that particular act they violated that certain, which states here, obstruction or blocking the exitways. Most especially that particular experience, that hotel, they blocked their very own fire exit. So it's a big no, no. So B, constructing gates, entrances and walkways to buildings, competence and yards, and temporary or permanent structures on public ways, which obstruct the orderly and easily passage for firefighting vehicles and equipment. So what comes into mind in this particular sentence is it I think I remember in Divisoria in Manila. So as you can remember that almost all of the streets is have been occupied by the vendors. So I think in case of fire in that particular area, firefighters will deal a very hard time extinguishing the fire because of super many vendors obstructing the public ways and walkways. So C, prevention, interference, or obstruction of any operation of the fire service or of duly organized and authorized fire brigades. So as you can see, prevention, interference, or obstruction. So in case of fire, certain civilians can help our firefighters, but we cannot interfere with them or obstruct them of any operation of the fire service. Okay? Remember that. So D. Obstructing designated fire lanes or access to fire hydrants. So the fire hydrant should always be located and should be allocated with a certain space just in case when a fire breaks out. So the fire truck can easily access it without any problem. So E, overcrowding or admission of persons beyond the authorized capacity in movie houses, theaters, coliseums, auditoriums, or other public assembly buildings except in other assembly areas on the ground floor with open sides or open doors sufficient to provide safe exits. Next, overcrowding or admission of persons beyond the authorized capacity in movie houses, theaters, museums, okay, blah. So, nabalik. So, andyan na. It's okay. So, lacking fire exits during period when people are inside the building. Next, prevention or obstruction of the automatic closure of fire doors or smoke partitions or dampers. H. Use of fire protective or firefighting equipment of the fire service other than for firefighting, except in other emergencies their use are justified. So the firefighting equipment should only be used for fire extinguishment only unless their actions or usage are justified, which is stated here. So next, giving false or malicious fire alarms. So the greatest example of this, no? So in the school, someone is pressing the button for fire alarm. So that certain act should be not be tolerated in any given institution or even in the office, especially in the educational institution, which students can be alarmed or even panic. Next, smoking in prohibited areas as may be determined by fire service or throwing of cigars, cigarettes, burning objects in places which may start or cause fire. So individuals should be well aware of where they throw their certain cigarettes because cigarettes can definitely ignite, especially if there is a fuel source who are emitting a flammable vapor. So everyone should be careful when throwing their cigarettes. Next, abandoning or leaving a building or structure by the occupant or owner without appropriate safety measures. I. Removing, destroying, tampering, or obliterating any authorized mark, seal, sign, or tag posted or required by the fire service to the fire safety in any building, structure, or processing equipment. And lastly, use of jumpers or tampering with electrical wiring or overloading the electrical system beyond its designated capacity or such other practices that would tend to undermine the fire safety features of the electrical system. So section 9 is, in this particular section, it states the violations, penalties, and abatement of fire hazards. So I want you to take note only this. The period with which the compliance shall be affected shall be within 10 days to 15 days after the receipt of the notice of order, depending on the reasonable to adequate comply with the same. So fire hazard shall be abated immediately. The chief BFP or his duly authorized representative, upon the report that a violation of this code or other pertinent laws and regulations is being committed, shall issue notice or order to comply to the owner for only 10 to 15 days after the receipt of the notice or order. So, na lang sila 10 to 15 days to comply. So 27. Please take note. If after the lapse of the aforesaid period, the owner, administrator, occupant, or other responsible persons fail to comply, the chief BFP or his or her duly authorized representative shall put up a sign in front of the buildings or construction that is a fire hazard. So in this particular sentence, if the owner or occupant is responsible failed to comply, a tag will be put in their building which states, warning, this building structure is a fire hazard. So this will be in a form of tag putted and can be seen visually in front of the building, which shall remain posted until such time that the owner, administrator, occupant, or other persons responsible for the condition of the building shall abate the same, but such period shall not exceed 15 days. Dapat i-abate na dayon ang mga flammable hazards or structures na naa sila ang building for only but such period shall not exceed, it should not exceed 15 days, okay? Finally, with the failure of the owner, administrator, occupant, or other persons responsible for the condition of the building, the chief BFP may issue order for such abatement. If the owner, administrator, or occupant of the building, structure, and their premises or facilities does not abate the same within the period fixed in said order, the building, structure, premises, or facilities shall be ordered. Take note, it shall be ordered by the chief of BFP, notwithstanding any permit or clearance or certified earlier issued by the local authorities. So, if example, if it exceeds 15 days and wala pa din, so the building shall be forced closed. So the BFP chief can order to close the certain building. So section 11, penalties against private individuals. So administrative fine. So the fine is not exceeding 50,000. Next, punitive fine. They will be punished by imprisonment of not less than 6 months nor more than 6 years, or by a fine of not more than 100,000 pesos, or both such fine and imprisonment. Student organizations. Okay. This is not included. Sorry. This is not included, guys. I'm sorry. Okay. So next, take note that any person who without authority maliciously remove the sign that it refers is latter discussed by me, which means this is the sign. Okay, if someone maliciously remove the sign that a building or structure is a fire trap placed by the authorized person in this code, they shall be liable for imprisonment of 30 days and a fine not exceeding 100,000. Okay? Pag meron ng taong tumanggal ng yung sign na warning, ito, warning, this building structure is a fire hazard. So they will be punished by 30 days imprisonment and 100,000 pesos. Lastly, any persons who disobeys the lawful order of the fire ground commander during a firefighting operation shall be penalized with imprisonment of 1 day to 30 days and a fine of 5,000 pesos. So in this particular sentence, this is on a scene of a fire operation. If a certain, for example, a fire officer disrespected or even rejected the fire ground officer during a firefighting operation, they can be penalized with imprisonment of 1 day to 30 days and a fine of 5,000 pesos. So for example, let's just say a fire broke out in UM and the firefighters responded. So firefighter A, the fire ground commander, wants to ventilate first the building, but firefighter B, who is his subordinate, does not want to ventilate the certain building, it means in that certain act he can be liable for to be penalized with imprisonment of 1 to 30 days and a fine of 5,000 pesos for disobeying the lawful order of the fireground commander during that said firefighting operation. So that's it. So summary lang oh. So in this particular code RA 9514, so it states the particular hazards, fire safety hazards, alarm systems, practitioners so this code it highlights practitioners, es- especially the BFP who handles who is authorized by this code. In this code, it also states the penalties or prohibited acts that should be avoided when handling or for the safety of individuals in case of fire incidents. So I think that would be it. And thank you for listening to me and God bless us all.